Hey guys, what's going on? First one I got for you today is Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut. This is his first novel, and he doesn't quite have the black humor part down yet, but I think it's just as good a satire as any of his other books, and it's more focused. He doesn't try and have the grand scope that's in Slaughterhouse-Five or Cat's Cradle. It's based in a future where America has just won World War III, naturally, but all these soldiers come home to find that their jobs have been automated. And the engineers and the creators of these machines assure everyone that they're going to have more free time, that they're going to have more commodities, and that their quality of life in general is going to be higher. The main character is the head engineer of one of these plants, and he's very career-minded, and his wife is very career-minded. She's always trying to get him to go to these corporate meetings and to try and rub elbows with the higher-ups, try and brown nose. And he plays into it a little bit, but he starts to realize the devastation that automation has caused for everybody else. Of course, it's given him a massive sense of purpose and a lot of financial benefit, but he's taken that from pretty much everybody else. He's taken their purpose and their meaning and kind of consolidated it and given it to himself and all of these other engineers. And there's this great part of this book where there's this corporate retreat. They all go to this island, and I've been a part of those in some of my past jobs, and they're really distasteful, and you can tell that Vonnegut had the same distaste for them. It's almost cultish. Everyone gathers together and you're just pumping each other up about how much good you're doing for society and how people really need this, and how, of course, everyone's always been scared of progress. People are always scared of change, but it's up to us to plow forward, even despite people saying we're doing the wrong thing, because that is progress. This is the price of progress. But eventually the main character does have a change of heart, and he tries to dismantle the organization that he helped to build up. The main point I think Vonnegut makes here is that efficiency is not something to hold to the highest degree. It's not something that people can aim their entire lives towards, or as a society that we can strive for efficiency above everything else. It's kind of a hollow pursuit. Where is efficiency taking you, and why do you have to go there so quickly? It's the polar opposite of mindfulness. So anyone trying to be mindful, like myself, I would suggest try being less efficient, because efficiency is looking in the future. You're being efficient so that you can do something else. There's a quote in this book. It says, "A man that competes with a slave is a slave." And of course, AI is a slave. So the real world parallel there is we're all soon to become slaves because we're competing with this machine that we cannot hope to outperform. And the price of a piece of AI art is zero, essentially, right? So if it becomes the same caliber as actual artists, then what is the price of that? If you can't tell the difference, then what is the value of an artist? And that is a terrifying thought. And I know I'm probably being anti-progress here, but that's kind of what I got from the book more than anything else, is that we need to look at these advancements individually and with great depth. I know it's hard to stop a ball rolling when it starts, but the advancement of AI is either being propelled for financial reasons or for efficiency reasons, both of which are kind of cold, heartless, and empty. And if we're risking the purposeful platforms of individuals, it's something that really needs to be examined. And I know that's not how the world works. Things are shoved off the production line in hopes of making money. But really, how much thought was given to the Wi-Fi enabled microwave? Was anyone in that meeting saying, does society really need this? Is this advancement anymore? Or is this just a cash grab for something that no one really wants, but we're going to try and tell them that they want it? And keep in mind, this is coming from a self-proclaimed cold, rational bastard, so I get it. Efficiency feels good. Efficiency feels right. But when you look at it from any kind of a spiritual standpoint, it starts to lose its luster. Certainly it has a place in society, and certainly it has a place in people's lives. I won't spoil the ending, but it's not definitive in any one way, which I'm realizing is a theme with Vonnegut. He kind of paints the world in grayscale, which sounds really lame, but that's what I like about Vonnegut, is that he presents these black and white scenarios and kind of plays with them, but eventually, always, it's in the middle. It's always gray. The world is gray, and I like that. Again, it's not exciting, but the world is gray. There is nothing black and white about it. It may satisfy me to say that progress is bad, but of course it's not. Some is good, some is bad. Efficiency is bad. No, some is good, some is bad. It's always that. It's just not satisfying, so your brain doesn't want to sit on that. But that is the answer. That is the answer. Okay, and the palate cleanser after that one was Britt-Marie Was Here, Fredrik Backman. You know I like this guy. He is the greatest palate cleanser. This book took a beating. It's like sticky. I took it camping with me, and this fog descended upon the campground. And I looked down at this book, and it was just wet. It was just soaking wet. And I don't know how this happened. I swear I didn't do that. Maybe I'm sleep eating books. It's hard for me to believe that's anything but a bite. So I might have eaten some of this book. But anyways, it was exactly what I expect from Backman. It was a lot like A Man Called Ove, and you can see the cover art is almost exactly the same, so he knew what he was doing. He had a hit with A Man Called Ove, probably, and he tried to do it again, and he succeeded, I think. The format is you start with this main character who is unlikable. A Man Called Ove, he was curmudgeony, yelling at kids for getting their soccer ball in his front lawn kind of thing. Britt-Marie is inflexible, kind of uppity, and just not open to other people's ways of life. And you start off disliking her, hating her more and more, but then you learn about the reasons why she became this way, and you find sympathy. And if Fredrik Backman could do this for every personality type in the world, I think we could achieve world peace. But we'd all have to read probably about 20,000 pages of this guy. And I'm trying to keep these books as like shortcuts in my mind for when I am bothered by someone out in the world. But you look past that and you look past the rough, annoying exterior and into whatever childhood trauma or whatever life circumstances made them into this unlikable person. At times it did get melodramatic, but I feel like he rides the line. He seems to know when he's being melodramatic, and he'll kind of bring it back to reality really quickly, I found. If I was ever rolling my eyes, there was a bit of a twist that brought me back into the book. And it wasn't exactly as I expected it to be. A book like this, you'd think you can see where it's going to end and you can see all the twists, but that wasn't really true for this one. It's not entirely sports focused like Beartown was, but it's a big theme. And Britt-Marie finds herself surrounded by sports fans. And of course, she's not a sports fan, and she couldn't even imagine why someone would feel compelled to kick a soccer ball around, but that's just because she never has. And I related to that as someone who's not a sports fan, but who finds themselves watching a game sometimes. And the people watching are super into it, and I'm not really. So I try and put on this demeanor where I pick a side and I'm involved in the equation, because people are really passionate about sports. People are really passionate about a bunch of things that I'm not passionate about, so I'm trying to figure out how I cannot detract from any of those passions. I might not be able to add to them without being a part of it, but I can definitely try not to detract from it. And this comes at a really good time at the start of football season, American football season. And maybe I'm just getting older, but I feel like it's more prevalent this year. People are more into it, or I'm just finding myself in the middle of more football conversations. And of course, I have runoff knowledge about teams and players and scores and whatnot. But in the past, I have definitely stuck my nose up at sports or football, and I don't want to detract from anyone's enjoyment of something. I really don't mind his writing style. It's very plain, it's very inoffensive, but sometimes he does these cutesy things. In this book, there's a character called Somebody, because their first interaction, they were just somebody in a restaurant. And then it kept that. Now, somebody said this, and somebody walked into the room. And I thought it was going to be some big reveal at the end where somebody was actually her father or something. But it was just somebody. The whole time it was somebody. And I guess that's clever, but I don't know. It didn't make much sense to me. a very uplifting book. There's a lot of heart. There's a lot of life advice in this book, and in pretty much all the books I've read of Fredrik Backman. So I need to find another one for my TBR for the next palate cleanser. And lastly, I wanted to read something for the season. I just put my Halloween decorations up, and I found Frankenstein on my shelf. Been wanting to read this one for a while. But actually I read this copy because I opened up my Penguin edition and there was like 12 introductions. This is all introductory material. And I've been spoiled like that before, and especially a book like Frankenstein. I don't know the plot of Frankenstein. I didn't until I read it, but people assume that you do. So especially in an introduction, they'll go and talk about the very end and how it all brings it together and spoil it for somebody who's just about to read it. So I didn't feel like doing that to myself, and I decided to read this bare bones copy instead. The book was written in 1816, so obviously I gotta give it a big antiquity bonus. The back actually claims that it was the first science fiction novel ever written, which I'm sure can be disputed, but of course it's foundational. It does have that old, archaic, verbose delivery. It's all narration. It's almost like a parody of itself, because it starts off in someone's narration, which bleeds into someone else's narration, which bleeds into someone else's narration. They had no concept of white space on the page. They had no concept of dialogue. So it was a little tough to get through at certain points. And also because I would say 5/8 of this book is describing sadness. Describing Frankenstein's sadness or Frankenstein's monster's sadness. And it's done very fancifully. They're in the cold embrace of Mother Nature's heartless grasp or something, which I like. Of course, someone who talks about how much they love Count of Monte Cristo, but even I have to admit that book is way too long. Frankenstein was a little more manageable. Frankenstein had the same kind of prose, but it better matched my patience with the prose. And as someone who read a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, I can just imagine when he first read Frankenstein, he was like, I'm gonna make my entire career based on this book. Because it was so similar about the character's disposition and the format in which it was written. Scientific. Obviously, Lovecraft was a little more verbose, which I don't think is a compliment. But I'm sure he credits Frankenstein to what inspired him. It's a great story. It's a classic story. There's a lot of themes to grab at here. The one I liked the most was how Frankenstein's monster gets mad at God, essentially. And it does him absolutely no good. Because everyone at some point looks up to the sky and asks why. Why did this happen to me? But you never get an answer back. And it's a dead end. It just leads to more frustration and more anger and more sadness. It's crazy to see how twisted my view of Frankenstein was as someone who had never read the book. I still had the idea of the guy with the bolts on his neck and the stitch line on the forehead. But in truth, he is a super intelligent, hideous looking guy. Frankenstein was never hideous in any adaptation that I'd seen. He wasn't human, but he wasn't hideous. Usually had a pretty strong jawline. And I certainly didn't expect the book to have this kind of emotional depth to it from something that really resulted in comedies and Saturday morning cartoons. But that just goes to show you, you gotta get it straight from the horse's mouth. And I hope that if any of these books interest you, that you go and you read it and you don't take my word for it and say, oh, well, I know what that's about because BookJack said this and this. You really gotta read the book, especially Vonnegut. There's a lot of nuance in Player Piano, a lot of nuance in every Vonnegut book. And that's what I got for you today, guys. As always, thanks for watching. I think I just hit 2,000 subscribers, so thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. It's really awesome to get to read these books and have a platform to talk about it and see what you guys thought about them. It's really awesome. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.